And now we have Stacey Abrams, who I'm telling you, this photo is going to come back to haunt her and other Democrats over and over and over again. How stupid is her campaign? I mean, they put this out there as though we are going to celebrate this politician sitting in front of the littles, every single child masked, and she has nothing on her face. And then when it immediately had a negative reaction on Twitter from people on the left and the right, her attempt to handle it was by saying it's the Republicans are launching, quote, a false political attack on me. Her explanation for the photo was, I posed for the pictures on the condition that everyone else mask up. Hello, Stacey, not helping. And then she said, I had to remove my mask to speak to the students so they could hear me. Right. We get it. We have children. Guess who they need to hear even more than you, Stacey? Their teachers, their classmates. You know, like as if the rules of hearing change whether Stacey Abrams is in the room or not. It's infuriating. And I wonder what your thoughts are on her and the others and just their ongoing willingness to flout the rules they create.
I mean, this is more of this mass hypocrisy where we're seeing these politicians saying, you know, do as I say, not as I do. And we see the same thing when, Nancy Pelosi throws a fundraiser and all the wealthy people there are unmasked. And then you've got this like servant class they've created who have to wear the mask. I think it's creating huge resentment among the working class. It's creating huge resentment among parents. There's no reason to have these kids masking up in schools. The kids have negligible risk. And we've seen that schools that don't have these requirements, there's no more spread than those that do. So we're like far enough into this pandemic that we know the answers. And, the problem they're having now is that, most of the country wants to move on from COVID, but within the Democratic Party, there's still a huge number of sort of COVID dead enders who never want to give this stuff up. And so the question is, why are Newsom and Garcetti coming up with these preposterous lies? Is because they're afraid of their own base. They've basically programmed these people with so much fear of COVID over the last 2 years that they're having trouble now deprogramming them.
Yes, that's right. They've actually brainwashed people. But you've got governors of blue states who they know that there's that tug of that constituency on the left, but they also saw what happened to Phil Murphy in New Jersey in a seat that he was running 30 points ahead to keep. He only kept it by 3 points to somebody who had virtually no name recognition. And that's why Phil Murphy was one of the Democratic governors who yesterday said, hurrah, we're getting rid of our mask mandates. Now he made it 5 weeks away, but he did it. Our governor, I live in Connecticut now. He did it. He said the end of February. Delaware, they did it. Even Oregon got rid of their school mask mandates yesterday, or at least announced they're going to go away on X date. And it's not because they're seeing the light on COVID, David. They're worried. They understand where the tide is.
Absolutely. I mean, CNN declared that the science has changed. No, the science didn't change. The polls changed. Somebody produced a memo inside the DNC showing apocalyptic poll numbers for Democrats in November if they stick to these COVID restrictions that the country is sick and tired of. And so that is why the science suddenly changed, is because the politics has changed around this issue.
Mm-hmm. And it's not like it's happening in a vacuum. Like everything else is awesome. If we could just get off the masks and, yay, we're beating COVID. You've been very vocal about how, this monetary theory that we could just spend however much we wanted and it would never come back to haunt the economy has been proven totally insane, completely boneheaded and wrong. Now we've got 7% inflation that we're dealing with, and the supply chain crisis goes on, though it doesn't make as many headlines as it used to. And so this environment is going to prove toxic and very unfortunate for the Democrats. There's only so much, however, they can do about those other issues right now.
I think what we're seeing, connecting the dots between this MMT, this modern monetary theory that basically said that debt doesn't matter, we can spend whatever we want. There'll be no day of reckoning for that ever. There'll be no hangover to this party. Connecting that to COVID, what you see is a total failure of the expert class in America. That all of these pronouncements by experts on COVID, on inflation and so many other things have proven to be wrong. And yet the social media companies, the prestige media, they want us to censor speech based on what the experts say. And, you would think that after so many of these pronouncements have been proven wrong, they would have more humility than that.
Yes.
That is the thing that is so frustrating about this not just mindless appeal to experts, but this idea that we should censor based on official opinion that keeps shifting and changing.
Yeah, no, we need better experts. And I want to talk to you about Joe Rogan and why he and others are such important alternatives. But before we get to that, I think you and I are eye to eye on Fauci. As far as I understand, I'll give you a compliment. My producer, Debbie Murphy, absolutely loves your podcast, and she listens to it all the time. And she told me that you explained the Fauci how he's been compromised with respect to gain of function, and then trying to get all the scientists around him to shut up about how they've been doing this kind of research in the Wuhan lab. I don't know if she said better than I had, but equally as strongly. But that's something that the mainstream media won't touch. His hands are dirty in getting us into this pandemic. I'm not saying he created this particular virus, but his hands are so dirty. And yet we're supposed to worship this guy like a god. He shouldn't have had anything to do with the public health messaging on this.
Fauci wrote op-eds in 2011 and 2012 advocating gain-of-function research, which is basically a fancy name for enhancing pathogens in order to study them. And there was two schools of thought in the scientific community. One, led by Fauci, was we should be doing this. The other was, this is just crazy. And, the risk, it outweighs the benefit. And by the way, I haven't heard of any of the benefits of this type of gain of function research. What benefits actually materialize? What learnings did we get from this type of science that actually helped us over the last 2 years of the pandemic? But in any event, Fauci wrote these op-eds. He advocated for gain of function research. These were not throwaway comments by him in front of, a reporter or a congressional hearing. He went out of his way to publish these articles. And Obama, when Obama was in charge, he looked at this issue during his administration, and he banned gain-of-function research. I have to imagine that meeting in the Oval Office took like 5 minutes, because I could just imagine Obama saying, you want to do what? You want to make pathogens more viral, more transmissible, more deadly in order to avoid a future pandemic? What if you create one? And so Obama banned this. And in January of 2017, Fauci and Francis Collins, the head of the NIH, changed that policy during the transition between administrations when Trump didn't have his people in place. You can imagine during the chaos of the administration changing, the NIH repealed that ban on gain of function research. And then subsequent to that, they funded a group called the EcoHealth Alliance, a British scientist named Peter Daszak. They funded him to do this type of gain of function research. And then Daszak funded this Wuhan lab. And so, look, I think, Fauci didn't create the virus, but he advocated for the type of research that may well have produced it. Yep. And where is the investigation into this by the mainstream media? This COVID is probably the most significant international event that we've had since World War II. And yet anytime anybody wants to raise the issue of the origin of COVID and where it may have come from and the mistakes that it may have led to, it's like, oh, we don't need to know the origin of it. That's not really important. What matters is what we do now. Well, I beg to differ. If we want to avoid a future pandemic, we certainly need to know what may have led to this one.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.